The New York Rangers add some much-needed depth to their blue line by signing Erik Gustafsson to a one-year deal. We talk about the veteran defenseman on today's show, as well as what kind of role he could play for the Rangers. Plus, what does this mean for the future of Zac Jones? All this and much, much more on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 864 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And so I wanted to kick off today's episode by talking a little bit about Erik Gustafsson, 31-year-old defenseman, signed to a one-year deal with the New York Rangers worth $825,000. The Rangers kind of continuing their trend of signing players to not a lot of money this offseason, and certainly not a lot of term either. As we talked about, the Rangers signed, between the first 2 days of free agency, they signed 10 different players. None of them got more than 2 years. None of them got more than $825,000. Gustafsson was one of the guys that got $825K, and he will, of course, be a UFA when this season ends. But to kind of get to know Gustafsson a little bit, 6 feet tall, 197 pounds. He has played for every team in the NHL. That's not literal, of course, but it kind of feels that way. You look up his hockey reference page, and he has definitely bounced around the league. For somebody who's only spent 7 seasons in the NHL, he has certainly played for a lot of different teams. And I suppose if you're Gustafsson, you should never fully unpack, when you get to a new team, because you could be on the road, before you can even, before you even know what happened. You could be on your way to another team via free agency, via trade at the deadline, or whatever the case might be. But the interesting thing to me about this is that the one team, or one of the teams that he never played for, was the Edmonton Oilers, and they were the team that drafted him. They took him in the 4th round back in 2012. He went number 93 overall that season. Made his NHL debut with the Blackhawks in 2015, 2016. He was there for parts of 4 seasons. For Gustafsson, that's an eternity. Then after that, he goes to the Flames, to the Flyers, to the Canadiens, back to the Blackhawks, to the Capitals. This past season, he was with the Capitals with Peter Laviolette there, and then finished this past season with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And after his first run with the Blackhawks, and again, that lasted for parts of 4 seasons, Gustafsson has never spent more than 1 full season with the same team. Another way of saying that is that since 2019, 2020 to current day, so we're talking about 5 seasons here, Gustafsson has played for 8 different teams. Gustafsson, by joining the Rangers, this will be his 8th team in the past 5 years. That doesn't even seem possible, but apparently it is a fact. He has certainly bounced around a little bit, and we'll talk about, why that might be the case when it comes to Gustafsson. It's funny. We sometimes do, and we're going to do this offseason as well, but we'll do these crossover episodes. Anytime there's a trade involving the Rangers, or anytime that, a Ranger free agent signs with another team, or another team's free agent signs with the Rangers, we do crossover episodes with some of the other Locked On hosts, and that's always a lot of fun. With Gustafsson, I don't even know who to talk to. He's played for every team in the NHL. I'm thinking maybe Locked On Blackhawks, because he had a 4-year stay there during his first run. Then he was back there for a season not too long ago. So that's probably the way to go. But yeah, he is somebody that the definition of a journeyman, and not even that old, just 31 years old and playing for all these teams. But 379 games in the league for Gustafsson. He has scored 39 goals and picked up 152 assists in that time. So 191 points in 379 games, which is a lot more points than I realized that Gustafsson had put up. We'll talk about that more in a second as well. But we're talking about somebody here who, as a defenseman, more than a half point per game player, not too shabby. For what it's worth, the rest of his stats, he is a +1 for his career. He has averaged 19 minutes and 6 seconds of ice time per night. It's also worth noting that the highest average time on the ice in his career, all these different stops that he's had that we just talked about a minute ago, the place where he got the most time on the ice was indeed with the Washington Capitals this past season. He was there for the first half of the season before he was traded to Toronto, and he, of course, was there with Peter Laviolette. During that time, he averaged 20 minutes and 22 seconds of ice time while he was with the Capitals. And as I mentioned a second ago, his average ice time per night for his career is 1906. So we're talking about a difference, an increase of a minute and 16 seconds while he was with the Capitals. For whatever that's worth, Peter Laviolette obviously liked what Gustafsson was bringing to the table, and obviously, rewarded his play with some extra ice time. I realized the Capitals weren't that great last year, and maybe they didn't have other options or that many other options as far as defensemen were concerned, but be that as it may, it still was the highest time on the ice per night for his career for Gustafsson. For his career, again, he has also blocked 394 shots, dished out 363 hits, and 119 takeaways against 277 giveaways. As I mentioned a second ago, he does have obviously some familiarity with Peter Laviolette. I would like to think that Drury, and obviously he's the one that does the signings and he's in charge of all the transactions. I know there's some Ranger fans that are going to tell me that, Dolan does everything or Glenn Sather does everything. And, this past year, as a quick aside here, I could believe that maybe the two of them kind of pressured Drury into making the Patrick Kane trade happen. I could maybe buy that a little bit, but I don't know. I mean, do we really think, Glenn Sather, 79 years old, like a few years ago, let's use Frank Vatrano as an example. Do we really think that like Glenn Sather was pushing Drury and breathing down his neck to bring in somebody like Frank Vatrano, who played very well for the Rangers as a rental? I don't think so. I think Drury has more power and is able to make moves that he likes more than people realize or more they give him credit for. I know there's going to be people that say that's naive, but I think Drury is mostly in charge of this, and he's the guy running the ship, at least for the most part. But yeah, getting back to Gustafsson here. So again, I like to think that Drury was in conversation with Peter Laviolette before he made this signing. Do you like this guy? How did he fit in with the locker room? Will he fit in with our locker room here? What does he bring to the table? Do you think he's a good fit? Is he your kind of player? I like to think that at least there's some communication there, and they get some kind of a feel for what Laviolette thinks of Gustafsson, because he's going to be the one coaching him, and he's going to be the one kind of acclimating him to the New York Ranger dressing room. So hopefully that conversation took place, and hopefully Peter Laviolette. I mean, again, the time on the ice last year, I think is worth noting that Laviolette gave him a lot of ice time. So you have to think that Laviolette was on board, hopefully, with this signing for the Rangers. I mentioned a second ago, we went through all his stats. Just to throw out his playoff stats real quick. 33 playoff games for Gustafsson, 2 goals and 7 assists. 16 of those 33 playoff games for Gustafsson came with the Montreal Canadiens in 2020, 2021. That was the year when the Canadiens had that Cinderella run, went to the finals, lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Gustafsson played in 3 of the games in the finals against Tampa. And then this past year with Toronto, he only appeared in 2 playoff games and scored 1 goal. He was dealing with an upper body injury for part of that as well. But yeah, as far as Gustafsson is concerned, more of an offensive defenseman once again than I realize. We talked about, again, having more than a half point per game. It is worth noting that a decent amount of his points have come on the power play over the years, and we'll see. Maybe he's in the mix to be out there. I mean, I don't think he would crack the first power play unit. The Rangers have this guy, Adam Fox. He's pretty good. You probably have heard of him. And, that top power play unit for the Rangers tends to be 1 defenseman and 4 forwards. And even if they did go with 2 defensemen, I mean, maybe they put Keandre Miller there before they go with Gustafsson. So, Gustafsson has, obviously that's a part of his skill set, is doing a nice job on the power play. So we'll see if they mix him in there on the second unit. But the Rangers, they have a lot of options when it comes to the power play, certainly at forward, but also at defenseman. In between Fox, Trouba, Miller, and now Gustafsson, and maybe even Zac Jones if he's in the lineup on certain nights too. I mean, you got a lot of different defensemen that are right at home on the power play. It's almost like there's too much. I guess you can never have too much of a good thing, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see if Gustafsson is able to crack the man advantage units this season. We will see. As far as the rest of his skill set, a lot of Ranger fans have been looking for that puck-moving defenseman, and Gustafsson definitely qualifies there. Known as a very good passer. Not known as maybe the best defensive defenseman in the league, but, I've been doing some research and reading old articles and just kind of seeing what different people have said about Gustafsson over the years. And like I said, we'll talk to one of the other Locked On hosts about Gustafsson and just kind of find out what he brings to the table and everything. But I'm getting the sense that while he's not known as like a great defensive defenseman, it's not like he's a tremendous liability back there either. The way that, if you think about other Ranger defensemen, Tony DeAngelo, I think, is a good example of that. Obviously, he brought a lot of points to the table, but he could certainly be shaky defensively. Keith Yandel, I thought his defensive struggles were a little bit overstated at times, but he's another defenseman that was certainly known as kind of an offense-first defenseman. So, I mean, I guess you could throw him into that mix as well. I don't get the sense that with Gustafsson, he's really like a tremendous liability. There's just times where maybe you're left wanting a little bit more from Gustafsson on the the defensive side of the game. But the Rangers the last couple of years here, and you guys are just as well aware of this as I am, they have had quite the revolving door when it comes to their 6 defensemen. I mean, all the defensemen they've gone through, I had to write a list here because I wasn't sure I'd remember all of them. So you got Nemeth. This is just the last 2 seasons. You got Nemeth, Hayek, Jones, Braun, Harper, and Mikkola. I feel like Gustafsson has the chance to potentially be the best of any of them. He might be the best well-rounded, ambitious overall player among that entire group that I just mentioned. There's some that for sure he's going to be better than, and I'll let you guys figure out which ones those are. But yeah, I think this is a solid signing for the Rangers. Once again, Drury didn't have a lot of money to work with, but he made the most of what he did have. Solid couple first days of free agency for Drury and the New York Rangers. I want to leave you guys with this. I want to compare him to a couple of his peers, Gustafsson, that is. I also have to give a big shout out, a big thank you to Twitter user Python. He's a big Ranger fan. He's got his own Ranger YouTube show. You guys should check that out if you get the chance. Just search Core Python, and you will find it. Does a great job with his show. But he shared a stat on Twitter where he compared Gustafsson to 2 other, kind of offense-first defensemen, or at least guys that we think of as kind of offense-first defensemen. The 2 defensemen that he compared him to were John Klingberg and Shane Gostisbehere. Both of those 2 players, like Gustafsson, got 1-year deals, but I want to go ahead and compare their offensive numbers here. And again, let me preface this whole thing by saying I realize there's more to the NHL than points, especially when it comes to the defenseman position. But again, you're talking about 3 fairly similar players who are all known kind of as offensive defensemen. So let's go ahead and compare what they all did this past season and compare it to the contracts that all 3 of these gentlemen received. So Gustafsson, 70 games played last year, 7 goals, 35 assists, 42 points. He gets $825K from the Rangers. John Klingberg, 67 games played this past season, 10 goals, 33 points. So that's 43 assists, or 40. Okay, so 43 points for Klingberg overall. So let me just look this up here because I did not write this down in my notes all that well. Let me just check this out if you guys will bear with me for 1 second. I do know it is obviously fairly comparable to what Gustafsson had, but let's go ahead and check this out one more time here. So yeah, last season for John Klingberg, he ends up with a total between 2 teams of 67 games played, 10 goals, 23 assists, 33 points. So in summation there, he ends up with quite a bunch fewer points than Gustafsson had, 9 to be exact. Gustafsson had 9 more points than Klingberg did. And so what does he get for his contract, John Klingberg? Well, he ends up getting a 1-year deal just like Gustafsson did, but he got quite a bit more than $825K. He got $4.15 million from the Toronto Maple Leafs. And if we turn our attention over to Shane Gostisbehere, 75 games played last season, 13 goals, 28 assists, total of 41 points. He ends up getting $4.15 million from the Detroit Red Wings. So Klingberg and Gostisbehere both get basically identical contracts, 1 year at $4.15 million, and neither of them had as many points last season as Gustafsson. And again, I realize there's more to it than just how many points you get, but these are comparable players, and both of those 2, bigger names, just better known players, Klingberg and Gostisbehere. And you could make the case that they're both, slightly better players than Gustafsson. I think Klingberg for sure, but are they 5 times better than Gustafsson? No, I don't think they are at all. So again, this just goes back to my point that this is a really nice value signing for the New York Rangers. Again, it's not something that's going to make or break your franchise, but man, for just $50K over the league minimum, that's a really nice signing there for the Rangers. And one last stat to compare the 3. Gustafsson averaged 1946 of ice time, Klingberg 1956, Gostisbehere 2049. So Gustafsson had less ice time than any of the rest of them per night and still ended up with more points than both of them and was signed for about a 1/5 of the amount of money as either Klingberg or Gostisbehere. So you got to like that. In just a second, we're going to shift gears a little bit, but it is related to what we just talked to. And I'm going to discuss the future of Zac Jones, what the future holds for Jones going forward, because this signing of Gustafsson is just going to squeeze Jones out of the lineup. Is Jones potentially going to be traded? We're going to discuss all that in just a second. But first, got to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, we just want to go ahead. Thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And for the everydayers, stick around. We're still going to talk about all these players that the Rangers drafted. We already talked about Gabe Perreault, but we're going to get through the entire draft class. We're also going to get through the entire free agency class as well. But I wanted to shift our attention a little bit to Zac Jones, who, sometimes when the Rangers make these moves, a trade, a free agency signing, whatever it might be, I will kind of talk about winners and losers. And I think one of the losers from this signing might be Zac Jones. It's not to say that Jones still can't make the opening night roster, still can't claim that sixth defenseman spot. And in fact, it wasn't more than just a couple of weeks ago that the Rangers re-signed Zac Jones, an impending RFA, to a 2-year deal worth $812,500 per season. And that's all well and good, but even when that contract was signed, I still mentioned that I felt like a trade of Zac Jones was still possible. Now, there's a couple of different ways to look at this. On one hand, the Rangers were wheeling and dealing at the trade deadline this past season, and they made all the moves that they did without having to include Zac Jones in any of the packages. I mean, think about it. The Rangers went out and got Vladimir Tarasenko and Patrick Kane, and when these deals were in the mix, and you see on Twitter, oh man, the Rangers, they just acquired Vladimir Tarasenko. One of the first names that you think of that might be included going the other way back to St. Louis in exchange for Tarasenko is Zac Jones, because he is something of a prospect. He's put up great numbers in the AHL, and obviously very young, and somebody that maybe the Blues would like to get their hands on. Same thing with the Blackhawks. I mean, the Blackhawks are basically rebuilding from scratch. So, yeah, I mean, I figured, you trade for two high-profile players like that. Certainly, one of your top prospects in Zac Jones is going to be heading to either St. Louis or Chicago. That was not the case, and so it led me to believe that one of two things had to be true. Either Drury really did not want to give up Zac Jones and did everything he could to include other assets in those trades and not have to give up Jones. That could be the case. It also could be true that neither the Blues nor the Blackhawks were seriously interested in Jones. It wasn't somebody that they had to have. And so, they just didn't bother to try to get the Rangers to include him. Of course, both of these things could be true to a certain extent. It's at least possible. But again, the one thing that I mentioned, going into this offseason, and there is some evidence to suggest that the Rangers do like Zac Jones, but when you make a move like this, it does feel like a little bit of a no confidence in Zac Jones, a vote of no confidence in Zac Jones. You're going out and you're getting a veteran defenseman, a 31-year-old defenseman, a journeyman defenseman, if ever there was one, to come in and play the role that essentially Zac Jones himself has been unable to claim, over the last handful of seasons with the Rangers. He's played in parts of 3 seasons with the Rangers, obviously still very young, 22 years old, but he had a golden opportunity this past season. At the start of the year, he was kind of the front runner to claim the sixth defenseman spot. It was basically just Zac Jones versus Libor Hajek throughout training camp, throughout the preseason, throughout the first handful of games of the regular season. They gave both those guys a fair chance. They were rotating them in and out of the lineup. Whoever was playing better was the guy that was going to see the ice. But eventually, the Rangers determined that they're not getting enough out of either Jones or Hajek, and that's when Ben Harpur got his chance and kind of took the bull by the horns and held it down back there. And, of course, Ben Harpur was then squeezed out of the lineup when they picked up Nico Mikkola along with Tarasenko. But, unfortunately, Jones has had his chances. I mean, he hasn't had an extended run with the Rangers, but he had a golden opportunity this past year. Just wasn't quite able to take advantage of it. And, we'll see what ends up happening. But, again, it's hard not to connect the dots a little bit here and think that it's possible that Zac Jones could be on the trade block and that Gustafsson has essentially been brought in as his replacement. Now, of course, they could both be on the roster. You could rotate them in and out, but I don't know. I mean, with Zac Jones, and again, he's got a one-way contract now. So my understanding is they can't send him down to the Wolfpack without exposing him into waivers. And they're not even going to try to do that. They don't want to risk losing him for nothing. So yeah, I mean, you could kind of mix and match the two of them in and out of the lineup, but I feel like Gustafsson, he's not somebody that you're bringing in to be a healthy scratch. He's a good enough player that he's going to be in the lineup pretty much every night. So does this mean now that Zac Jones gets traded and that, you roll with Gustafsson as your number 6 defenseman and Ben Harper, remains in his role as the number 7 defenseman? He steps in if anybody gets injured or anything along those lines. That honestly kind of sounds like it might be the most likely outcome here. Again, I wouldn't completely give up on Jones yet, but this was not a good move for him as far as a move that the Rangers made. With Jones, the one knock on him, undersized. He is a smaller defenseman for sure, 5'10", 179 pounds. Gustafsson, by comparison, I mean, Gustafsson's not a giant either, but he is 6 feet tall, 197 pounds, so quite a bit bigger than Zac Jones. And of course, offensively, can do a lot of the things that Zac Jones can do. Again, as far as Jones' future with the team, it's hard not to notice, in addition to Gustafsson, just how much more crowded it's gotten at the blue line. To begin with, barring a trade or anything unexpected, 5 of the 6 Ranger defensemen on opening night next season, you guys know who it'll be: Lindgren, Fox, Miller, Trouba, Schneider. They're going to be out there, barring anything, like I said, completely unforeseen or a trade of some kind. So they'll be out there. And then you look at just how competitive it is for that last spot. Gustafsson's probably going to have it. You've got Jones. You've got Harper, who I already mentioned. In free agency, the Rangers, they didn't just sign Gustafsson. They also signed Connor Mackey, Nicholas Brouillard, I believe is how you say it. Brouillard is the only one of these players that's never played in the NHL, but they brought in him. They brought in Mac Hollowell as well. Ty Emberson is still here. Ty Emberson apparently just won recently the AHL East best defensive defenseman in player voted awards for the AHL. So that's obviously very impressive as well. And I don't know. I mean, do the Rangers start to see Zac Jones as expendable? We just don't need this guy anymore. We can get a decent, draft pick in exchange for him if we shop him around a little bit. We'll see. But right now, yeah, I mean, it just feels like the writing's kind of on the wall that Jones's days with the Rangers at this point could be somewhat numbered. I mean, never say never. Maybe they find a way to make it work. Maybe Laviolette on certain nights, maybe he's a little bit more open to the idea of dressing 7 defensemen than previous Ranger coaches have been. But most coaches don't do that. And if you do that, you're probably taking a forward out of the lineup who probably doesn't deserve to come out. The fourth line right now, as far as I can tell, is, Vesey, Goodrow, Pitlick, and Bonino. That's 4 players. One of them will be on the third line, and the other 3 will be on the fourth line. I mean, who are you going to scratch there? It'd be hard to pick one of those guys out. So, yeah, I don't know. It just kind of feels to me like right now, like the writing could be on the wall and that Zac Jones could be on the move at some point this offseason. Time will tell, and we'll see how it all shakes out. But in just a second, I want to wrap up today's episode, turning our attention, shifting gears a little bit to Ranger rookie camp. As I'm recording this, it's Tuesday morning, so it's a 4-day camp, 4 days right in a row: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We're going to talk about the first 2 days in training camp. Adam Sykora made some impressions. It looks like Gabe Perreault is having a nice, start to the camp as well. So we will go ahead and talk about that in just a second. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. Rangers rookie camp. So Pierre Laviolette attended, as did, it seemed, most of his coaching staff as well. And as far as just, takeaways from this, and I'm doing all this pretty much secondhand. I'm going off of, what the Ranger beat writers are writing, what they're saying on Twitter. The Rangers Twitter handle itself has shared some videos from the camp. The beat writers that are there, they're right up against the glass, so they're getting some good videos as well. That's all I had to go by. As far as I know, this isn't on YouTube or anything like that. It's obviously not on TV. So we'll just go ahead and kind of go through some of the takeaways from the first 2 days of camp. And then once the camp is over, we'll check back in again. I'll look at the final 2 days of camp and just kind of have some final thoughts on the entire thing. But obviously, it's very exciting to see all these young Ranger players out there trying to make a favorable impression on the organization, improve their standing, and presumably, perhaps increase their or speed up their path to eventually playing for the New York Rangers. I got to believe that's the ultimate goal for pretty much everybody at this camp. But you start with Adam Sykora. This is for anybody that needs a refresher. The Rangers took him in the second round of last year's draft. The Rangers did not have a first-round pick that year, so he was the first player that they chose. Apparently, he just dazzled in the skating test, and I don't even have to say apparently because I watched the video. That was one of the videos that the Ranger Twitter account shared. This kid can absolutely fly, and he had the fastest time in the skating test. And again, the Rangers posted a video. Kid was absolutely, looked like he had turbo in his skates. He can move, that's for sure. And he apparently, after one of the sessions of the first 2 days, mentioned that his goal this season is to play for the Hartford Wolfpack. And if that happens, it's obviously great news because he's getting to be closer to the Rangers. I highly doubt we'll see him with the Rangers this upcoming season. I suppose never say never, but we will see what happens there. Gabe Perreault is also at the Ranger rookie camp. He was obviously the Ranger first-round pick from this year, number 23 overall. Kind of just fell into the Rangers' lap. Most people thought he was going to go a little bit earlier in the draft, but a very talented player, a little bit undersized. But when a player with this kind of skill that Perreault has falls all the way to you at number 23, I think you owe it to yourself to pounce, and that's obviously what the Rangers did. But a couple things from Perreault. He mentioned that he's been playing left wing in recent seasons, even though he was kind of listed as a right winger. But he also mentioned that he kind of got his start as a right winger. That's where he played when he was younger. And also mentioned that he's completely comfortable playing either one of them. So that's good news for sure. To begin with, as I've mentioned in the past, right now it feels like the Rangers have more left wingers than they know what to do with. But just to have that versatility in general. And of course, we don't know when Perreault is going to debut. It's probably going to be at least a couple of years here. And the roster could look different. But for sure, I want somebody that can play right wing, because right now, as I've mentioned in the past, even after the signing of Wheeler, who plugs in on a 1-year deal here, still does seem to be the thinnest position for the New York Rangers. But Perreault was also asked about his experience at the draft and how he was feeling when he fell all the way to number 23 overall. It didn't seem to bother him too much, at least going by his response here. He said, "It doesn't necessarily matter where you go; it matters what you do after." And yeah, amen to that. I think somebody named Henrik Lundqvist can probably attest to that. So great attitude there. He was asked about the Rangers, being drafted by the Rangers, and he said they were really interested. I had some good meetings with them during the year and at the combine. When they were on the clock, I had a pretty good feeling. So that's cool. I mean, obviously, sounds like the Rangers, this is somebody that they genuinely had interest in. It's not like he just fell to them and they were just kind of winging it and, oh, this guy fell, let's take him. No, they genuinely had interest in Perreault. It's also worth noting that Dan Muse, now an assistant coach on the Rangers, he spent the past 2 seasons working with Perreault as the head coach of the U.S. NT DP under 18 teams. So obviously there's some familiarity there as well. And by all accounts, Muse was very excited when they were able to draft Perreault. So that's good to hear as well. Perreault, it's also worth noting here, worth repeating, because I mentioned this when they drafted him. He this past season, and video game numbers is a term that I use on here quite a bit, but this is just insane. Like he had 132 points in 63 games last year in the USN TDP. That was a new record. The old record belonged to Austin Matthews, who had 117. So it wasn't even really close. Perreault beat Austin Matthews by 15 points in that league. One more quote from Perreault here. "I've got to keep getting stronger, keep adding on weight, and work on my skating. I think those are probably 3 of the biggest things." So that's cool to hear. That was the first day of camp. Then the next day, which was yesterday, Monday, July 3rd, it picked up a little bit. They were doing a lot more hockey, live action kind of drills, not just skating drills. There were pucks on the ice and whatnot. So that's a good start. But Brett Berard scored a goal and later put a shot off the crossbar. Berard, a former, for anybody who needs a refresher, Berard, a former 5th round pick by the Rangers. He was only 5'9" and 165 pounds. Left winger, 20 years old. He has put up really solid numbers at Providence College the last couple of years here. Actually played 3 games with the Hartford Wolfpack this past year. No points in those games. And he's also played with the USA World Juniors team in each of the past 2 seasons or 2 of the more recent seasons. And he won a gold medal with them in 2021. Again, an undersized player, but very scrappy. Seems to have some good burst out there as well. So we'll see how it goes with Brett Berard going forward. But I mentioned the goal. He actually also, not too long after that, hit the crossbar with a shot, one-timer that Perreault set him up for. So, yeah, good to see Berard. You got to hit on some of these late-round picks every now and then. And obviously, we'll see what happens with Berard. The jury's still very much out on pretty much every single player at this camp in terms of, who they're going to turn into. Are they going to make it to the NHL? What kind of players will they be once they get there? But it is cool to see them in action at rookie camp. And Yaroslav Schmeller, he scored a goal, carried the puck across the top of the crease and scored on a backhand. There was a cool video that was shared of that. Schmeller, a 5th round pick in 2021. He also will be back at Providence College for his sophomore season in the fall. But again, sooner or later, you got to hit on some of these late round picks. We'll see what happens with Schmeller. I figured we can wrap up today's episode by talking a little bit about some more free agent news, because there are some players on the Rangers who are obviously still out there, still unsigned. There are also some former Rangers that signed with new teams. So we'll run through that really quick here. Vladimir Tarasenko. I think coming into this offseason, all of us pretty much knew that there was little to no chance that he would be back with the New York Rangers. I mean, never say never. You never know for sure what they can do. They trade this guy to make some cap space. They trade that guy to make some cap space, and they squeeze in Tarasenko under the salary cap. I mean, these things are always possible, but it always felt really, really unlikely. Honestly, ever since the moment that they traded for Tarasenko, he felt very much like he would be a rental. He is still out there. There's nothing official yet. He is still unsigned, but he is rumored to be narrowing down his options. And it sounds like the Carolina Hurricanes have emerged as the favorite to land Vladimir Tarasenko. And that would really be unfortunate. Sounds like the Ottawa Senators also in the mix. Look, the Canes are tough enough, and they've had a good offseason here. They've added some good players. If they get Tarasenko, they're really going to be a problem next season in the Metro Division, as if they're not enough of a problem already. It's a tough team. Rangers have a really good rivalry with them. Rangers did knock them out of the playoffs a couple of years ago here, but the Canes are really, really good. And adding Tarasenko would just make them that much more dangerous. And man, for Tarasenko to go from the Rangers right to a division rival, that would be rough. I'm rooting for the Senators to swoop in here with a nice offer for Tarasenko, talk him into leaving the Metro Division, and the Senators would be doing the Rangers a big favor there. Because again, I don't think there's any way the Rangers themselves can re-sign Tarasenko. So let's keep our fingers crossed that somebody not in the Metro Division signs Vladimir Tarasenko. We will see. Ryan Carpenter, Rangers brought him in on a one-year deal this past season. They were hoping that he would center the fourth line and just provide some depth. Didn't really go that well. He got placed on waivers, went down to the Hartford Wolfpack, never came back up. He signs with the Sharks on a one-year, two-way contract. William Lockwood, he was the player acquired from the Canucks in exchange for Vitaly Kravtsov this past season. He signs with the Florida Panthers, a two-year, two-way contract. And then our old friend Mark Stahl, he signs with the Philadelphia Flyers on a one-year deal just north of $1 million. So I suppose we'll just wait and see which team Mark Stahl gets traded to at the trade deadline this upcoming season. We will see. But yeah, that's pretty much it as far as free agency news. We'll keep our eye on other free agents around the league. You know, maybe I'll do an episode where we look at, the best of the rest, the best guys remaining, the guys that could make sense as, to be signed by the Rangers on a team-friendly deal and an expensive deal. We'll do that at some point, but we'll keep our eye on free agency around the league. The Rangers' own free agents who are still out there. Mott's still available. Patrick Kane's still out there. Yaroslav Halak, I mean, we know he's not coming back at this point, but he's still out there. And certainly we'll keep you guys posted on everything there. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that's lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, there's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.